So let's just jump in and actually play with this rather simplistic API. One of the main positives of working with an API is that you can clearly define all of the required fields and or options that are available to the end user. So at this stage, tools list would be an internal application. So it's for someone on your team to come in and add a tool and add a description. Let's call this a jackhammer, right? And the reason we're saying that it is for an internal team is because we're adding something such as total quantity available, total quantity reserved, and whether or not it's in stock. This isn't something a client would be able to do. This is something that sort of like an internal team member would be doing. So let's add a jackhammer. Add jackhammers, right? Add jackhammers. Let's give her an arbitrary price of 200. And this could be price per hour, so let's not do that. It's in stock. And I believe I set it up so that it does an automatic calculation. And we shall see post, right? Cool. Total quantity available. Total quantity reserved, that's fine. So let's start off with this. So we made a post request, right? It returned a HTTP 201 so that it was created. And it still shows you all the different actions that are available to this endpoint. So let's now, again, and this was to this endpoint. So now let's get this endpoint. Now we can see before it was an empty list, but now we currently have a list of DICs, basic or DICTS. This is a JSON object now that contains all the fields that are related to the jackhammer that we just created. And this is something that an end client would be able to see, right? So they come, you have your internal client creating the tools. You have an end client being able to hit this endpoint as soon as the tools are created and see, oh, look, they have a jackhammer in stock. For this price, they have 9 available out of the 9 that they have, and also a description of the tool. So this would be something that someone who, a client would be able to come in and now reserve this through a different system. That also could be API-based, preferably, and then that's when we're getting into the whole microservices range. So that's one thing. And now let's go to a specific part. So I'm just going to take this UUID, and we're going to make a GET request to this UUID, and now you can see that we're dealing with a tool instance. So again, an internal client or internal system could then update and modify this specific instance or resource. As we can see, now you have slightly more methods that are available to this singular resource. You have, in addition to get and head and options, you now have put, patch, and delete. So what does that mean? Let's take a look at options. We have the actions to put, right? This part is fine. It's a tool instance. That doesn't really change much. It just describes what this endpoint is. And if you look at our actions, we have put, right? Whether or not it's required. Some of our values are required. So if they were to make this request, they do not need to provide created at. They cannot provide created at because it's a read-only field, meaning that they can't modify it. But they can change things such as name is required, description is required, price is required, in stock is not required, and all of these other guys are not required, and they're not read-only, so that they can be changed, but they're not necessary to actually creating the resource. So we'll get to that in a second. So now that we do have put, that explains that. We also have patch, and we have delete. We won't delete it just yet. We will go through and we shall perform a patch just to mix things up. So now that I'm editing the raw JSON data, I do have the ability to patch. But with a HTML form, I do not. I only have the ability to put. And why is that? Because with a patch, we can change a few things. Let's change the description, right? With put, we have to provide all the fields. And let's say description is like a really good jackhammer. And we patch. Oh, well, yeah, sorry, it's giving us an error, and that's a good thing. If you do something wrong, we got a 400 error, bad request. That means we did something wrong. I believe we had a comma, a trailing comma, and it was expecting something else. A really good jackhammer patch. There we go. And we successfully updated it, right? And we only updated the description. We did not change anything else. The resource was preserved as is. And so let's now update the name. Let's update the name. Oh, shoot. No, that's fine. Name to, let's call this not Milwaukee, let's call it a Detroit jackhammer. Detroit jackhammer, because I don't want to get copyright sued over this, so we'll call it do, and you can see the name has also been updated. And so that's an example of a patch request. We are only changing one field or specific fields, but not all fields. And that's what qualifies it as a patch. We're patching the data. Now, if we're to do a put request, let's call this a really good job made in Lansing, Michigan. Right? Now, if we're to do this with a HTML form, we are adding all of these fields, and therefore it's not necessarily a put request, not a patch request. It is a put request because we're updating all the fields. And if you see that, we have updated the description. The only thing that changed was the description, but in truth, all the different fields that were editable, so everything that is not created at, update at, or UUID, were changed to match the new values. Now, one thing, let's do this. I think I'm also doing some auto calculations, and we'll do that. Yes, perfect. So as you can see, this is just a cool thing. You can set up background automatic things to occur whenever an endpoint is hit. One thing that this thing does is actually calculate the available based on the reserved amount, but not vice versa. So if we were to change this to 7, right, we'd still get 6. But that's just some business logic that you can implement on the resource or the API to make sure that it functions as well as it should be. And now let's duplicate this page and perform a delete request. So now we got this nice modal that says, hey, are you sure you want to delete this tool instance? And we do. So we'll delete that. And we've got a 204, no content, as it should be expected. That's a good sign. Remember, anything that begins in 2 is a good sign. But let's go back to this page, the existing one. Now, this endpoint still exists, but the endpoint exists, but the actual resource does not. So let's make a put. This is attempting to hit the resource after the delete, gives us a 404, not found. Remember, anything that begins in 4 is a bad thing, saying that we are attempting to do something. We as a client are attempting to do something that is not possible. And so that's a good thing. So we can't do any put requests, we can't do a patch, and so we are done with this. Well, thank you for your time. And, there's a lot to be learned about HTTP requests and REST APIs. We'll leave the links to these wonderful resources here.